Welcome back to Lesson 1, Unit 2 of our 6th grade science course. So today we're going to talk about control groups, experimental groups, independent and dependent variables. So today the teachers are Nitish, which is me, and Aswin.
Here are the table of contents. First, control groups. Second, experimental groups. Third, and independent variables. And fourth, dependent variables.
So first we're going to talk about control groups, and we're going to find what are control groups.
Control groups are groups in an experiment that are tested without the testing variable and are used to compare other objects which are given the testing variable. Scientists use this method to find out what the difference is between the objects with modification and without modification.
Now we're going to have a small check for understanding. We're going to tell which one is a control group. So example 1 is a paper airplane with extra paper and extra weight is flown and measured. Example 2 is a dog is not given a specific dog food and is used to compare it to other dogs who are given the specific dog food. Next example is the people given out a new antibiotic to test out side effects. So the control group in this three examples, like example 2, was in this example the dog was not given a specific dog food and is compared to other dogs, which means that this dog has not experienced any changes to its characteristics. Example 1 can't be a control group because the paper airplane is given extra paper and extra weight. And example 3 can't be a control group because the people are given a new antibiotic.
Here's a sample table for control groups. Scientists use this method because they will compare the changes that happened to test object 1 and compare them to what would happen if nothing wasn't taken. This will make sure that the scientists will find the effects and consequences of the testing sample.
Next, we'll talk about experimental groups and what are experimental groups.
Experimental groups are groups in an experiment that receive the variable being tested. Scientists use these groups to identify changes in their body characteristics or mental characteristics.
Next, we'll go back to the example and we'll find out which one is the experimental group. So in these three examples, example 1 and example 3 are experimental groups, because in these groups, the object or the person is given something new and something new that will affect its mental or physical characteristics.
Here's a check for understanding. Thomas wanted to find out how plants react to the new repellent. He bought two types of similar plants, and one plant was given the repellent while the other one was not given anything. Identify the control group and experimental group present. In this check for understanding, the control group is the plant without anything, and the experimental group in this check for understanding is a plant that was given the repellent.
So next, we can talk about what are independent variables, and we'll find out how it correlates to the experiment.
Independent variables are variables that do not depend or change based on the influence of others. In a graph, this is the x-axis, otherwise known as the horizontal line. An example of this is time. Time is an example of an independent variable because nothing influences time.
So finally, we're going to talk about dependent variables and what are dependent variables.
Dependent variables are variables that can change based on the influence of the independent variables or any other variables in the experiment. An example would be the population of the world, since the population depends on time. The dependent variable is shown on the y-axis, otherwise known as the vertical line of the graph.
So finally, we're going to talk about the final example. The final example is Sam wanted to find out how fast his phone chargers on his new advanced charger. What should be his control group, experimental group, independent group, and a dependent group? So let's go through this step by step. So his control group should be when the phone charges with the normal charger, and the experiment group should be when he charges his phone with the new advanced charger. His independent variable should be time, and the dependent variable should be how fast the phone charges. Because as time increases, the level of how fast the phone charges also increases. So for this week, we're gonna have a homework. So make sure to complete the Google form to get a better understanding of this lesson. Have fun and see you next week. Bye.